Yes, the subject matter, yes. I think we discussed discussed as a suggestion the universal principles of Krishna consciousness with special consideration of the spiritual need of postmodern men.
Okay.
And women.
Also. Naja. The most common Sanskrit expression probably to say universal principles is Sanatana Dharma. And Prabhupada explains the word dharma. The word dharma comes from a Sanskrit root dhar, which means to hold or sustain, and therefore, for example, dhara means one who sustains, as in Giridhari, Krishna who holds the Giri, the mountain, or Chakradhara, Krishna holds the chakra, or Gadadhara, Krishna who holds the Gada, the club. So Dharma, which also means law in Sanskrit, it indicates, as Prabhupada mentioned, a principle of behavior or a code of conduct which sustains the identity of a particular object. In fact, if you look at earlier Sanskrit, the word dharma is used to mean an essential quality of something. For example, a poetic way of saying that someone died is to say that kala dharma tamatyagat, that the kala dharma overcame that person. And of course, the kala dharma, the essential quality of time, is that it destroys everything. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, kalasmi loka kshaya krit, I am time, destroyer of the world. So, or as Prabhupada explains, the dharma of water is to be liquid or transparent. So if something is not liquid, it's not water. Because that liquidity holds, just like Krishna's Giridhari holds the mountain, so a particular quality or a particular attribute or characteristic holds the identity of something as such. So for example, in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, Bhishma, there's a list of some of the topics that Bhishma spoke about when he was on the bed of arrows. And one of them is Raja Dharma, the Dharma of kings, or royal Dharma. The Stri Dharma, the Dharma of women. Dana Dharma, the rules governing charity, and so on. So, clearly, if we talk about any type of Varnashrama Dharma, the Varna, that whatever Varna we have, or whatever ashram we have, simply belongs to the body. And the soul is not a king, the soul is not a Brahman, the soul is not a material male or female, a sannyasi or brahmachari, grihastha. Those are simply bodily designations. And perhaps, if you will allow me, Swamiji,
Yes.
I would like to bring up one topic which I was discussing in Radhadesh. And that is, if you look at India, we find this very amazing tension or contrast in the sense that, on the one hand, probably India came up with the world's most powerful teaching about the oneness of all living beings, that we are all spirit soul, and even the souls in animals or birds, or and so on. They are all, it's all the same type of soul, the same quality of soul. And then you have, of course, Shankaracharya, who obviously went too far for different historical purposes, and declares that everything is simply one. So you have this, and Shankara, within Hinduism, not within the real world, but within Hinduism, he's considered to be the great theologian, sort of the Martin Luther or something of Hinduism. And so you have this powerful teaching of the oneness of all souls. And on the other hand, India developed what is arguably the most oppressive social hierarchy in the world. And now, of course, with modernization, India is also gradually changing, but India, without question, developed probably the most oppressive hierarchy in history. There were obviously moments, there have been many dictatorships and tyrannies and terrible oppressive regimes. However, these things usually didn't last so long. We're talking now not about some crazy sociopath dictator seizing power, like a Stalin or a Hitler or a Mao or people like that. But we're talking about a civilization, an actual culture that goes on century after century after century. Not because some sociopathic dictator took power, but because that's their culture. And so you have this very powerful articulation of oneness, and you have this incredibly oppressive hierarchy existing at the same time. So I'll add one more point here to get back to, not to get back, but to make it clear how we're on the topic here. So there are different kinds of dharma based on the body. And so there are dharmas which reinforce hierarchy. For example, the Bhagavatam says that about sannyasis, that that the sannyasis are sarvashrama namaskritam, that all the other social orders offer respect to the sannyasis, all the other ashrams. So there are dharmas which are by nature meant to sustain hierarchy. And yet, ultimately, all these dharmas that reinforce hierarchy are based on the body. And when we get to the soul, we have Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana means eternal. Sanatana Dharma means it's not your essential duty as a man, as a woman, as a sannyasi, as a grihasta, as this or that. It's your duty as a soul. And it actually doesn't matter what kind of body you have, because it's directly the duty of your soul, not just of your body. Now, interestingly, one more point which I have to add here is in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 20 through 22, Krishna describes jnana, Greek gnosis, knowledge. Krishna describes jnana in the three modes of nature. And he says that in the mode of passion, one sees the differences of the world, man, woman, human being, animal, German, French, or Moroccan, or whatever. We see all these differences, young, old, Christian, Jewish, Hindu. We see these differences, and in the mode of passion, because a person in passion identifies with the body, these differences are fundamental. Men and women are really different. Or Christians and Hindus are really different. Germans and Brazilians are really different. Well, they certainly play football, soccer differently, but Brazilians and Germans. But anyway, so we see the differences in the world, and these things are just different. The differences are fundamental. Whereas in the mode of goodness, Krishna says, one sees a difference. Obviously, there are varieties in the world, but Krishna says within all these different beings, within men and women, within Christian, Jews, Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, within animals and humans and birds, Within all these different things, there is the same spiritual nature. There's only one spiritual nature. Now, within Vedic culture, or within Vaishnava culture, or within ISKCON, I think it's very clear that the more someone is still affected by the mode of passion, they will see the differences as fundamental. They will see men and women as just permanently different. They're just different. Or sannyasis and householders are just different. They're different kinds of beings, different kinds of living entities. And in other words, a person in the mode of passion, in the name of Vedic culture, will actually exploit the hierarchy to lord it over other people, or to feel that I'm better than other people. Whereas someone whose consciousness is actually more in the mode of goodness will obviously respect certain etiquette. There is a certain etiquette. Hierarchy is real because, for example, an example of a hierarchy, parents and children. Die Eltern und die Kinder. The parents and the children. That's a natural hierarchy. In the name of oneness, we can't say the children can eat whatever they want, they can do whatever they want, and the parents have no authority over their own children. That would be absurd. And yet, good parents see their children as part of Krishna, and therefore serve their children. Just like once, many, many years ago, a lady, a Vaishnavi, a devotee, I am not going to use the word Mataji, a Vaishnavi, for various reasons, which I can explain to you later if you're interested, but a Vaishnavi wrote to Prabhupada and said that she just wanted to serve the deities, but she had a little child, and so it was difficult. And Prabhupada said, child worship is more important than deity worship. So the point here is that in the mode of goodness, for example, a sannyasi, or actually there's no such thing as a sannyasi, a spirit soul in the sannyasa order of life doesn't really think that I'm better than other people. If a sannyasi thinks I'm higher than other people, he's obviously needs to practice bhakti yoga a little more seriously. So in all these relationships between guru and disciple, different ashrams, different varnas, the whole point is that someone who's actually Krishna conscious never thinks that I'm better than other people. Somehow or other, I have this duty. Someone has a duty to teach. Someone has a duty to learn. The parents have the duty to care for the children. The children have to follow their parents. These are simply duties. The parents don't think that ultimately, in some eternal sense, I'm better than my children. In fact, loving parents, their strongest wish is that the children become better than them. Isn't it? I mean, that's the natural feeling of loving parents. So, we can see that in this tension between hierarchy and oneness, if one is still affected by passion, another problem is that, and these are issues, this is not an accusation or criticism of anyone, but if people are managing the Hare Krishna movement, according to our philosophy, management tends to bring out the passion in people. And so there's a danger that people who are leading the Hare Krishna movement may be affected by this passion and may place more emphasis on hierarchy than on the oneness. And so I'm not accusing anyone, by name of anything, but we see in Vedic culture, Indian culture, India is the land of Krishna. Krishna appeared there, and yet in the name of Sanatana Dharma, it became probably the most oppressive social hierarchy in the world. And we are not. What we know is that in the Hare Krishna movement, the bad news is that most of its members are human beings. That's a little frightening. So, if we study the history of world religions and we look at our own movement, we can see that yes, just like devotees get the same diseases non-devotees get, some devotees have the same emotional issues, they need help, devotees, in other words, Krishna is the highest, our Prabhupada is Krishna's pure devotee, but we see that to some extent, we are affected by the same forces in nature, whether they're psychological or physical or sociological. We are affected by the same forces that we find outside the Hare Krishna movement, to some extent. And therefore, there is a danger of passionate consciousness leading to oppression in the name of Vedic hierarchy. And therefore, we must be always vigilant. We must be always vigilant to make sure that, obviously you can go too far on the other side, you can create anarchy. But we must be very careful to see that we never take this hierarchy too seriously. In the sense that we respect, it's like parents respect, children respect their parents, or a disciple has to respect the guru. There is, how should I put it, we're not trying to destroy civilization or etiquette. But within our hearts, within our consciousness, we should never forget that actually we're all one as servants of Krishna. We are all tiny souls, and we are simply trying to help each other to serve Krishna. So, and Krishna says this. Now, getting to the universal principles are applicable today. As we know, we live in a very democratic age. These are sort of like historiographical cliches. But we know that, for example, there was a time when Europe was sort of the, Christendom, the kingdom of Christ on earth. And you had these popes who were often quite degraded. But still, ultimately you had this sort of religious authority over Europe. And then with the Reformation, Martin Luther, all that sort of collapsed. And you have the rise of kings. Actually, it's very interesting because you can see a direct relation where with the collapse of the Pope as the authority for all of Europe, where the collapse of religious authority, monarchy got out of control. And therefore you have, for example, Louis XIV in France. You have the old form of monarchy in Europe, which was actually, the king was, in Latin, primo inter pares, the first among equals, that you get absolute monarchy, and this absolute centralization of power exploded and led to the French Revolution, which was actually led by the merchants. The French Revolution was basically a merchant revolution. And then you get capitalism, the rule of the Vaishyas. And so you see how things are coming down, and nowadays, at least culture, even though we still have we have sort of plutocratic governments in the world. Plutocracy means rule by the rich. And so we're getting this type of rule by the rich around the world. But still, in terms of culture, the existential philosopher Kierkegaard talked about this. That it used to be that the nobles would decide what is good music, what is good literature, or the church. Now, it's just a mass of people. If you make a record and you scream loud enough, and millions of people buy your record, then you're a great artist. So it's actually, in terms of culture, who decides what is popular music? Who decides what is a good movie? More and more, it's simply going to the people. We now have the democratization. We now have the democratization of information. Because it used to be there were news outlets, like Deutsche Welle or all these things. In other words, there were these big news companies that would control what information you receive. But now with the internet, information has been democratized. And so, as this goes on, this movement toward the equalizing of everything, then how do we respond to that? Because in a sense, what we were talking about earlier, even the fact that people less now than before are joining religious organizations or political organizations. In America, for example, America was always a two-party system, Democrats and Republicans, but now there's a large number of people that don't belong to either party. So it's not only in religion that people are resisting institutional authority. They're also resisting institutional authority in political institutions. And also religious institutions. So what we have in our favor here is that actually, if you read Bhagavad Gita carefully, and which I did in order to do this book here, which is available to you for the ridiculously low price of 10 euros. I'm an American. I came here to sell you something. Why else would I be here? So, one thing I found. But buy it today, and we'll give you also.
Buy two, get one.
So, In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna actually gives great emphasis to equality. Equality is actually one of the main themes of Bhagavad Gita. We may not notice it, but if you go into the Sanskrit text and read it carefully, you find it. For example, Krishna says, talking about what it means to be self-realized, Pandita Samadarshana. The Pandita, the wise people, they see all living beings. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Gavihastini, Suni Chaiva Sapakecha. Krishna says the Brahman, in other words, the highest human being, a Brahman who actually has knowledge and humility, not simply a caste Brahman, but one who actually is qualified, or literally, this is kind of gross. Krishna actually says a dog cooker. A dog cooker. So, which is the lowest human being. And then animals. Krishna gives the example of the cow, the cow receives special attention in the Gita in the definition of a Brahman, Goraksha. But then an elephant, another animal, and so on. So Krishna says the Pandyas see all of them equally. In fact, even before this verse in chapter 5, Krishna defines yoga as equality. In chapter 2, text 47, Sama Twang Yoga Uchate. Yoga is defined as equality. Krishna says, for example, Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu. I am equal to all living beings. Krishna says that if you want to achieve the highest bhakti, you must be Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu. You must be equal to all living beings. So, especially this word sama. Sama, English, same, gleich, egal. So the word sama actually means equal. And it's a very big topic in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna talks about universal empathy in Bhagavad Gita. He says, Ātma-Yoga sarvatra. You should compare yourself with everyone else. And so on. And therefore you should come to the point of seeing everyone as you see yourself. This is in Bhagavad Gita. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Actually, he quoted that from the Old Testament. So this doctrine of universal empathy is also in the Gita. Krishna, when talking at the beginning of chapter 12 about the impersonalists, he says that even though they're kind of, it's like trying to swim against the current. If there are two ways to get somewhere by swimming, and one person swims with the current, and the other person swims against the current, it's obviously much easier for the first person. But still, Krishna says, even the impersonalists eventually come to me, but only if sarva bhuta hiterata. They're dedicated to the well-being of every living being. And then we find in the Bhagavatam, for example, that Archayam eva haraye pujang jaksha dhaye hate. A person who is engaged in worshiping the Lord, but only in the deity form. Archayam eva, only in the archa form. Natad bhakteshu. And if that devotee does not worship that same Lord in the hearts of the devotees, sha'anyeshu, and in the hearts of all living beings. In other words, if I don't do my deity worship in the temple, but also in my relationship with every living being, then the Bhagavatam says, sabhakta prakrita smrita. That devotee is materialistic. That is not a liberated devotee. It is a devotee on the material platform. Because the devotee does not see the deity or does not honor the deity in every living being. So when we go to the mandir, like we have a little mandir here, we are practicing so that when we walk out of the mandir, we see that the deity is in every living being. That's the whole point. And if when I walk out of the temple, I leave my God consciousness in the temple room, then that is Prakrita Bhakta, a devotee on the material platform. So if we actually read, or for example, a devotee is Sutta Sarvadena. Now my point is, we have to look at ourselves and the way we present ourselves to the public. And we have to ask, are we emphasizing the oneness or the hierarchy? Do we, when we appear, just the way we physically appear in public, is the message, we are radically different from you. We are different from you. And we have done everything in our power in terms of dress and facial markings. We've done everything in our power to make clear that we are different from you. Or is the message that we're like you? We are normal people that chant Hare Krishna. I mean, to the extent that we're normal. We have to all to judge for ourselves whether we're really normal. But still, I had an experience in 1969 when I was even younger than I am now. And I'm from Los Angeles, so I am far Krishna West. Anyway, one time I was walking down Sunset Boulevard, where all the young people would go, in the vain hope of finding true love. Anyway, so I was walking down Sunset Boulevard, and I saw the Sankirtan party. And in retrospect, I mean, it must have been Tamal Krishna, Vishnu Jana, and they were all chanting on the street. And so I knew the devotees from Berkeley, where I was a student. I actually lived in Berkeley at that time. I was from Los Angeles. So I thought to myself, because I was going to chant with them, should I go and chant with them, or should I just stay here where I am? And I decided I'm going to stay here because I knew, I mean, you'd have to be completely insane not to know that devotees look a little unusual to people in general. And so I thought that because I'm a so-called normal person, just a college student, that if I chant Hare Krishna and people see a normal person chanting, that will encourage them to chant. So I actually had that idea before I joined the Hare Krishna movement, and before I even knew what the philosophy was. I hadn't read a book. I just knew that, devotees are nice. I like chanting Hare Krishna. So somehow or other, Krishna gave me that inspiration. Prabhupada actually reinforced that idea in the first letter that he wrote to me. When I moved into the Hare Krishna temple in 1969, I was a student at the University of California in Berkeley. And I didn't know whether I should continue in the university or drop out and go out on the street and do something much more important, like sell incense. And so I wrote a letter to Prabhupada. In those days, we were very innocent, and I can't say I was humble back then. Obviously not humble now, but I might have been a little humble back then. So I remember I stayed home all day. They let me stay home from Saturday. It took me like 3 hours to write the letter to Prabhupada because it was just so serious to write a letter to Prabhupada. So I wrote this letter to Prabhupada, and then he wrote me back and said, stay in school, stay in college. He said, because I want you to be nicely educated so that you can preach to other educated people. Prabhupada didn't say, just read my books. He said, you need to also have material knowledge if you're going to preach to educated people. And actually, that's what the Isopanishad says. That vidyang cha justad vedo bhayang saha, right in the Vedas. That avidya mrityum tirtva, in order to cross over death, you need knowledge of this world. You need knowledge of this world in order to cross over death. And then vidyamritavasnute, by knowledge of the spiritual world, you will enjoy immortality. It doesn't mean that everyone has to go and study in a university. But if we don't understand the world, how will we understand ourselves? Because we're products of the world. And if the goal is Ātma-Nivedana, to give yourself to Krishna, if you don't know yourself, You were speaking about that, about, psychological, like shadows and things. If we don't really know ourselves, how can we give ourselves to Krishna? Anyway, so regarding people in the postmodern age, I think we have to, I explained this yesterday actually, maybe I'll mention it again very briefly. We have to get over certain types of institutionalized immaturity. If you study human psychology, you see that if something is done by your elders and it has been done for a long time, that's what we do. And no one really investigates further. Just like in the military, people salute like this. And of course, you know why. Because in the Middle Ages, people wore armor and they had their heads covered by armor. And so if you saw a superior, you had to open your armor. You had to open your armor to show yourself to your superior. So now we just go like this. So that's the nature of human psychology. So for example, when the movement started, almost all the early devotees, almost all of them, came from the counterculture, the radical political movement. And so in those days, we were young, we were immature, and we saw the world as divided into good people and bad people. Good people had long hair, bad people had short hair. Good people were against the war in Vietnam, bad people were for the war in Vietnam. Good people were for civil rights, bad people either were against civil rights or didn't support it. And so the world was just, that's the nature of radical consciousness. That's the nature of political consciousness. It was a political consciousness, passionate, political, extreme, exaggerated. The problem is, we brought that consciousness to ISKCON. It would be naive and actually against the real history, which you can read, to think that Prabhupada just did everything exactly as he wanted. Prabhupada himself said he was doing the best he could. He had thousands of passionate, headstrong young people, and he just tried to keep them. I mean, imagine having like 5,000 teenage sons. And so, anyway. So my point is, we brought that radical vision of the world into ISKCON. We brought that radical dualistic vision of the world into ISKCON. That hierarchical vision. Remember, in Vedic culture, there's hierarchy and there's oneness. We emphasized the hierarchy. For one thing, because we were very young, there were no adults. And actually, if you study psychology, what you find is that whether it's human beings or elephants or gorillas or whatever, creatures who are deprived of their elders develop behavior that is antisocial, self-destructive, erratic. And so in the entire worldwide Hare Krishna movement, when I joined the first couple of years, there was one mature adult, Prabhupada. And then there was the rest of us, who were obviously not mature adults. I mean, I became a sannyasi a few years before my brain matured. Probably why I took sannyasa again. Anyway, I took sannyas, according to science, I took sannyas before my brain matured. And that was the situation. So we brought this radical worldview, this radical dualistic, hierarchical worldview into the Hare Krishna movement. We were very young and immature. And at first we were winning. At first, the dualism, this radical dualism, was simply that, we're Hare Krishnas, we're better than everyone else, and it seemed to be working. People were joining, we were going to take over the world. But then, that historical window that Krishna had opened closed. And we no longer made as many devotees, but fortunately for the Hare, and the temple economies were based on The temple economies were based on getting young people to join and then sending them out to sell something. Incense, books, anything. I mean, just anything that people would buy. So when we stopped making so many devotees, the temple economies collapsed. The temple economies collapsed, and our own conviction that, because Prabhupada always said that this is the evidence that our movement is bona fide, that it's growing, that we're making devotees. This shows that it's bona fide. So if we're not making devotees, you know, that you can see how that could threaten someone's faith. Now, ironically, or historically, at the same time, roughly the same time that we stopped making so many devotees, and every movement stopped making devotees. I mean, there was a time when there were so many famous Indian gurus in America or Europe. Now there's basically none. So when that historical period ended, America changed its immigration laws. And suddenly, hundreds of thousands of Hindus started migrating to America. And so, you know, in the early days of the movement, we always had some paraphernalia, you know, incense, or cheap records, or candles, or paintings. And then ISKCON discovered the ultimate paraphernalia, the Hindu congregation. And that, and you know, Karl Marx explains the rest. So ISKCON reinvented itself as an international society to service the Indian diaspora. So, but it's very interesting. This radical, dualistic, hierarchical worldview did not die. It lived on. It was simply, it found another definition. Now, it was not simply that the little Hare Krishna movement is right and everybody else is wrong. Now, it was that Indian culture is the supreme culture and everything in the West is evil. And so, and that's kind of where we are today, in some places. I mean, there are actually senior devotees preaching this. That, for example, Western clothes are just all sex. So, I mean, I apologize for the fact that I came to this program with such an obviously erotic shirt. And I hope you will destroy all these films. So, in fact, obviously, for example, Germany. Germany, by the way, I mentioned this earlier, Germany has the most popular national brand in the world. People actually study these things, like because every country has a certain image, which they call their national brand, or Marke, what do you call it? Marke. Yeah, Marke, National. So the point is that Germany nowadays actually has the most popular national brand in the world. And if you look, I mean, Germany's famous for being very clean, organized, everyone knows it. And when I come to Germany, I remember even for years and years, when I would come to Germany, I found it actually inspiring. I found Germany inspiring just in terms of just the civilization here and the intelligence of the people. And so even Krishna, and this is regarding the point, what to do in the postmodern world, God himself, Gott selbst. By the way, you know the word God comes from Sanskrit, right?
No.
Okay, that'll cost a little more. Linguistic information is not part of our contract. I'll explain this very briefly. Actually, in linguistics, the modern field of linguistics was invented when Europeans discovered Sanskrit grammar. Because, for example, the Sanskrit alphabet is actually a phonology chart. And India was literally thousands of years ahead of the rest of the world in linguistics. And Germans were among the leading scholars of Sanskrit grammar, and therefore, for example, there's an end of linguistics. So you have a German term, Lautgesetze, sound laws, Lautgesetze, which means that if we study, say, from Sanskrit, how we come to more modern languages, there are certain laws, Lautgesetze. For example, here's one that applies in this case. A Sanskrit H often becomes a European G. For example, the Sanskrit word for vehicle is Vahana, and of course you get the German Wagen. So you change the H to a G from Vahan, you get Wagen. And that's the same, by the way, that's the word Krishna uses in the Gita where he says, Ananyas chintyanto mam jejana teshang nitya vijuktanam yogachemam vahamyaham. Vahamyaham, that's the same word, vahami. Which you get vahana, which you get vagan. But the principle of the Lautgesetz here is that the H changes to a G. Or, for example, the Sanskrit word maha, as in the prasadam we used to steal when we were young. So maha, if you change the H to a G, it becomes the Latin magna. Or magna. So magna as in magnificent or magnified, that's just Sanskrit maha. Or, for example, if you take the Greek first person singular pronoun, ego, actually ego, the word ego, which is this Greek for ich, ego, ich, I. So if you change, it obviously comes from Sanskrit aham. Aham means I, so if you change the H to a G, you get ego. Similarly, now, so you see this, that's what it's called Lautgesetz, that you have this H changing to a G. And in the Sanskrit, there's the word huta, which means one who is invoked. In other words, the deity that is invoked is huta. So in the Rig Veda, the Absolute is described as puruhuta, invoked in many ways. And so if you change the H to a G from huta, you get got. And so anyway, that's the German word Gott, and of course English God. Anyway, so back to the main program. This radical, dualistic, hierarchical separation of the world, which for some people is everything Indian is good, everything Western is bad, and it can become very comical, like Guru Coolies trying to preserve Vedic culture, dressing like Muslim princes. Anyway, this radical dualism goes completely against the modern world. That's ultimately the point. You're talking about, if you look at the modern world, the postmodern world, it's gradually the elimination of hierarchies.
Vorne sind noch 2 Sitzplätze.
So, I mean, that's clear, isn't it? So again, in this tension, I mean, Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus, gave the example that that if you take a bow that's strung, how do you say in German? A bow.
Bogen.
Bogen. Yeah. That it appears that the bow is at rest. But actually, the power of the bow comes from the tension between the two ends. And so in that sense, you could say there's this powerful tension between hierarchy and equality. And for various historical, psychological reasons, which I think are not difficult to discover, I believe, it's my view, that ISKCON, of which I'm a member, that ISKCON has gone too far to the side of hierarchy. In terms of the treatment of women, in terms of the treatment of non-devotees, how non-devotees are perceived, in terms of, in just various ways, I believe that, and of course ISKCON is many things, There are temple communities, there are communities like this one. And so obviously there's tremendous variety. It's not that everyone is this way or everyone is that way, but still, in terms of our brand, just like Germany has the most popular national brand. Do you want to name plugs?
Das ist noch eine Stuhlfrage.
So it's very interesting because Germany has the most popular national brand in the world right now. It would be interesting to inquire how popular is ISKCON's brand.
Depends on where you ask.
How about in the Western world? Yes.
I think that's what you're just explaining. It's not an idea which is being currently discussed in society. But I think there are many other ideas which are being discussed. There's a dissolution of hierarchy, but there are many ideas, post-capitalist ideas, environmental ideas which are being discussed, but I don't think that ISKCON, the ideas of ISKCON are being part of a debate. And they used to be part of a debate in the 70s.
Exactly, exactly. There is a, I don't know how they say it in German, but in English they call it public intellectuals. Public intellectual means an educated person who is seriously concerned about public issues, like the environment, like freedom of religion, just public issues. An educated person seriously concerned about public issues. And so, just to give one example of how we have gone so far to, and I don't mean to offend anyone, certainly not here, I don't think anyone here will be offended, but and it's certainly not about Indians. I mean, Indians are not like this anyway. It's what I would call a type of Indian chauvinism. A type of where if something is Indian, it's automatically better than something Western. And to give one simple example that we were discussing of another group that's having, take the animal rights movement. The animal rights movement, how do you say it in German?
Tierschutz. Tierrechts.
Yeah.
Tierrechtebewegung.
Yeah, it's interesting because number one, here are people who are, most of them, almost all of them vegetarian. Number two, and this is very important, they are activists. They actually want to change the world. They don't just want to make their bodies sexy in a yoga salon. They actually want to change the world. So they're intelligent, they're activists, they're probably vegetarian, and devotees never talk to them. Why? They're not Indian. Whereas the yoga movement, which is also certainly a good place to preach, we should definitely be talking to people in the yoga movement, but because they have connection with India, everybody's there and nobody's on the side of animal rights. So,
but this,
yeah.
I think this has something to do because our external appearance is automatically interesting for the yoga movement, but it's not automatically interesting for the animal rights movement.
Exactly.
But
But what we find is, for example, and again, I'm not criticizing at all bringing Krishna to the yoga world. We should do that, and the devotees that are doing that are doing a valuable service. I'm making a different point. I'm saying that if someone likes you, it's probably you will like them, isn't it? I mean, if you know that somebody really likes you, that gives you a certain interest in that person. So we show that we like things associated with India. And therefore people associated with India like us. And we're comfortable together. And therefore we conclude these are the people who are favorable to Krishna consciousness. Forgetting that it's probably the case that because we are comfortable with them, they are comfortable with us. Whereas if we went other places and let people know that we appreciate them and we are like you and we share so many things, it's extremely likely other people as well would feel comfortable with us, would be interested in us, and would probably want to hear something about Krishna.
But I think, isn't it the problem that we sort of make a show of being like in a way pseudo interested in other people and not really interested? I mean, what you're saying is that you're saying is like we should really be open to other.
We should, for example, I have to admit, when I come to Germany, ich bin, how do you say, fasziniert? I mean, I know something, ich kenne etwas, deutsche Geschichte, and I don't mean the bad history, I mean there's also good history. So, but Germany is a very interesting country. I've actually studied German history, even going back to the time of Julius Caesar and before Julius Caesar. It's a very interesting place. And there's so much to admire there. I mean, I think a person would have to be blind not to appreciate many things in Germany. In fact, the world appreciates Germany. Again, voted the #1 national brand. That means there's so many things in Germany the whole world appreciates. But do we appreciate it? Are we the only ones in the world that don't appreciate it? And as I was saying, Krishna himself, if you say, well, I'm not German, I'm spirit soul. Hey, that may be true, but Prabhupada constantly appealed to our nationalism. In America, he said to me one time, what is the use of your being American if you don't do something wonderful? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna calls Arjuna Bharata. So guess what? Bharata is a nationality. It's like, for example, I could say to Satchidananda Swami, Deutsche Shrestha, best of the... Yes.
They do not want to agree.
No, we would all agree. So, but Krishna calls Arjuna by his nationality. You know, in the early days of the movement, we thought that we can ignore our human dimension because I'm not a human being. I joined the Hare Krishna movement. But the fact is that, as Isa Upanishad explains, we are spirit soul, we are part of Krishna, but our human nature is a big part of our life. In fact, our human nature, according to Bhagavad Gita, determines our role in society. Krishna makes very clear in Bhagavad Gita that your Varna and your ashram come from your human nature. Krishna says in verse 333 that Sadrasham cheshtate swasya prakritir jnanavanapi. Even a jnanavan, even an enlightened person will act according to their own nature. And he means their human nature. Krishna says, as a general rule, prakriting janti bhutani. Creatures follow their nature. Living beings follow their nature. Nigraha kinkarishati. What will repression do? So, if Krishna, even Krishna is called Yadava, which is a nationality. It's like wake up and smell the kofta, you know. Which is, by the way, a Turkish preparation that Krishna likes because Krishna is very, according to what many pujaris say, Krishna is very fond of Turkish food, which was brought to India. Anyway, so the point is, Krishna himself reciprocates. How will Germans respect us if we don't respect them? How will they admire us if we don't admire them? And frankly, the Germans deserve a lot of admiration. I saw a documentary recently about Germany between 1945 and 1950. And it was, as you know, it was a terrible situation. And so to go from that situation to build up, you know, the most popular and one of the most prosperous countries in the world. I mean, someone would have to be an absolute fool not to appreciate the German people. So, how do we show our appreciation? Frankly, not by rejecting everything German. German music, no good. German clothes, no good. German food, no. Nothing is good enough. Nothing is good enough. Everything, we have to culturally colonize Germany. Good luck. Feel good. Good luck trying to culturally colonize Germany. The point is that in every country in the world there are 3 modes of nature. There is a mode of goodness here. There is sattva food, there's There are sattva clothes, there's sattva architecture, there's sattva music, there's sattva everything in Germany. It may not be everyone, it may not even be die meisten Leute. But it's there, it exists, and it is very much part of Germany. It is within mainstream German culture. And so, and this is just me personally, I would do a festival of spiritual Germany. I would not, the message I would give is that you're no good. Nothing you do is good enough. You have to look somewhere. Prabhupada, it's like, let me give you an example. If, let's say you own a store. I say Laden. Yeah?
Laden is good.
Yes, yeah, Laden, that's, you all get it. Not Bin Laden, but Laden. So, let's say you own a store and people are not buying your products. So you call your employees and you tell them, I am cutting all the prices in half because people are not buying. So then, your employees, Arbeitnehmer, they don't do it. The employees don't tell the people that you have reduced the price. And again, no one buys your product. I believe that's a situation in the Western world. Prabhupada said that we could just add Krishna. Somehow or other, we are not communicating that. You can say, we say it, we tell people, you don't have to change anything, but social science demonstrates that when people are giving a message to the public, like for example, a political debate, what people say, their words, is a very small part of the message that people take. 80%, almost all of the message is what people see and their perception of the person's character and how they're talking, what's called body language. So ISKCON, we say, you don't have to change anything. Just add Krishna. We say that. But our body language is screaming, is shouting from the rooftops, you must be Indian. Especially, obviously, and this is the irony, most of the devotees in the Western world are actually normal people. They have families, they have jobs, they're normal, respectable people. But whenever we have a high-profile event, which establishes our image, all the devotees are very careful to hide the fact that they're normal. It's almost like it's some dangerous secret that the public can't be allowed to know. Don't let them know we're normal. So if we have a Rath Yatra, Festival of India, which is an amazingly great idea. Festival of India, all this, hide the fact that you're normal and show yourself abnormally. And therefore, despite the fact that, again, most of the devotees in Germany, or in France, or in America, are normal, respectable people who are Vaishnavas, the public does not understand that. And unless we can persuade the public that we are actually normal, respectable people, it's not going to happen. Yes?
Excuse me, but...
No, go ahead.
Where do you put the border? I mean, if you stop preaching to the people, everything is okay, you don't need to change your clothes or whatever. Then we come to discussion I always have with my father, why Krishna, the Christian Orthodox, is as good, become a Christian Orthodox priest, if you want. And in Germany it would be, I don't know, Catholic or whatever.
Yes.
So where do you put the border?
Very
Why
good
Krishna?
Eine sehr gute Frage. Very good point. Yes, there are three things that we cannot change, that we cannot adjust, according to Prabhupada. One is our philosophy. If someone says, for example, I don't like the name Krishna, it's sorry. So we cannot change our philosophy. We cannot change our basic spiritual practice. I'm not talking about superficially. Prabhupada said clothes have nothing to do with the soul. I'm talking about the actual spiritual practice. Prabhupada said, these are quotes from Prabhupada, clothes are a dead thing. We are interested in consciousness, not clothes. So, the basic spiritual practice. And for me, based on my personal association with Prabhupada, Prabhupada felt very deeply about the institution he created. I mean, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that a religious institution is a necessary evil. And any religious institution in the world will inevitably sometimes be quite silly. But still, it's necessary. It's actually necessary. We have to have a united religious institution. So, now your question. These things are new. These things are new, as you said, and we cannot compromise. But the point is, let's go to philosophy for a moment, Bhagavad Gita. If you read the Bhagavad Gita and you bring to the Gita this question, what is the relationship between devotees and non-devotees? The answer you find is that devotees and non-devotees are different and they are not different. For example, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita talks about his devotees, Mad Bhakta, usually, as a special community. And we know that those who have, if you think Krishna is very good, you're not a devotee. If you think Krishna is everything, then you're a devotee. When you understand Vasudeva Sarvam, that Krishna is not simply something very good, he's actually everything, then you're a devotee. So the community of devotees, according to the Gita, is a special community. At the same time, many, many times in the Gita, Krishna speaks about everyone, all souls, as one community. For example, he says, Sarvasya Shamri Sannidhish, I'm in the heart of everyone. He says, Ishwarak Sarva Bhutana, I am the Lord of all living beings. So many times Krishna speaks of everyone as one community. Therefore, in presenting Krishna consciousness, now here's addressing your question directly. In presenting Krishna consciousness, we must communicate both the oneness and the difference. If we only communicate difference, then people who are a little whatever and want to be very different and exotic and wild, yeah, they'll be attracted. So the simple question, when we go out on the street with our typical presentation, how do we communicate the oneness? Because we are presenting something new and different. Therefore, the only way we can get normal, respectable people to listen to us is if they think we're also one with them. It's like I've been giving this example. Let's say someone goes to a restaurant and then let's say one of your friends, someone, a friend of yours or a family, they say, yeah, this restaurant's amazing, or I saw this amazing movie. Because it's someone you know, because it's someone you identify with, you take it more seriously. So when people how do we allow people to identify with us in our public presentation? Not just one special group. As I was discussing with Satyananda Swami earlier, that there are many, many, many subcultures in Germany and every country. There's the yoga community, there's the academic community. I mean, even in the academic, there are the philosophers, there are the historians, there are the animal rights people, there are the garden societies. We're a great place to preach because, simple living, nature, beautiful, Krishna. Actually, the sages were nature lovers if you read the Bhagavatam. So, there are all kinds of communities, political, social, cultural, educational. And we should reach out to all those people. But there has to be a center. There has to be a center. My understanding of what Krishna says in the Gita, Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu, Mad Bhaktin Labate Param, 1854, that if you are equal, fair to everyone, then you achieve the highest bhakti. Similarly, the Bhagavatam says, Sunadak Sarva Dehinam, in the verse he teaches about, that the devotees, the saintly people, are equal. They are the dear friends of everyone. Society has a center. I mean, we need to think about these things. Now, devotees often give ridiculous arguments, such as we can't wear, say, normal clothes because fashions are always changing. Actually, the way I'm dressed right now, and if you want to know the name of my designer, see me after the program. But the clothes I'm wearing now, this is exactly how people dressed when I was 5 years old. I mean, the earliest I can remember what people were wearing. I mean, there is a basic way that men and women dress that has not changed in 60 or 70 years. There's fashions, Paris, London, blah, blah, blah. But most people aren't, you know. So what I'm saying is in Germany, and increasingly around the world, because you find increasingly the same culture all around the world. It's called globalization. And Prabhupada talks about it in his preface to the Bhagavatam. So there's a center. What that means is there is a way of presenting yourself in Germany to the public which does not say that you are liberal or conservative or Christian or Buddhist or Jewish or anything. It simply says you are a respectable German citizen. That's all it says. And my point is that I personally, the reason I wear these, you know, extremely stylish clothes is because it is my sense of justice. Because all social science knows, if someone doesn't know this, they really are in the wrong century. All social science knows that people like to be with people who are like them. If you're German and you're traveling in some far off part of the world and you meet another German and it's a German from your city, it's like immediately, you're buddies. If you walk by that same person in Germany, you'd never say hello to them. But the point is, people like to, it's an issue in terms of how corporations choose leaders, gender issues, the number of women in high corporate positions. It's a major issue in social science that people like to be with other people who are like them. Why do you think you have so many ethnic neighborhoods? Why do people that come to Germany from other countries, or Germans that go to another country, why is it people live together? When Americans go to Saudi Arabia to work in the oil industry, they all live together. When people come to Germany from other countries, they live together. So the point is that I want to be the same distance, equidistant to everyone. If I present myself to the public in a particular way, that makes it much easier for some people to accept me and much harder for other people to accept me. And I'm not criticizing people that have other views. Obviously, Satchidananda Swami has another style, and I'm not criticizing that because he's doing great devotional service, and which we all admire. I'm simply saying that this is my approach, and this is just me, based on my own esoteric psychology. But the way I feel is that I personally, and I want to be, and even if sannyasis dress like that, which is their right, I think that the Hare Krishna movement in general should be our external. I'm talking about external things, not the internal things. Externally, our center should be Germany's center. Our center should be Germany's center in the mode of goodness and for Krishna. And that way we're the same distance to everyone. That is what I understand by the word samak sarveshu bhuteshu, equal to all beings. Yes?
But there is here a problem, because then we have a difference between internal and external. We have an external presentation that is equidistant to everyone, as you said. But then people come to our centers, and there they might experience a totally different picture of us, and then how to deal with that.
Okay.
Those two different worlds that we then have.
Yes, exactly.
Can I ask a question to it?
Let me just...
But it refers to what he said.
Yes?
And would you say that there's maybe, because what you said, maybe there is really something deeper, like a psychological issue, that people sort of want to present something, they say something, but they don't really mean it, and it's sort of like
Well, before I get into that, I think I'll take it easy for it. I believe, according to history, according to Vaishnava history, and the history of world religions, and social science, in other words, all the available evidence indicates that we will be successful in Germany. We will be a powerful, influential, spiritual movement in Germany only if we achieve a higher level of integration with German society. That's what all history teaches us. That's what all social science teaches us. And so I believe that being normal in terms of external things, not I mean, we have a spiritual practice, we have our philosophy, we don't change that. But in terms of things which are changeable, according to Rupa Goswami, they're changeable. According to Prabhupada, they're changeable. I think we should change those things. Maybe not, maybe not the pujari. Won't talk about pujaris because, they hang from the highest banyan tree or something. But the point is that Rupa Goswami in chapter 6 of Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, gives a list of fundamental principles of Bhakti Yoga. These principles cannot be changed. Then he says that my brother Sanatana in Hari Bhakti Vilas has given the details. And Prabhupada explicitly says these details may be changed. In ISKCON, it is my belief, and I think it's based on facts, that we have merged these two categories so that all kinds of external, superficial, changeable details, such as how you dress, and Prabhupada says it's a dead thing, it has nothing to do with the soul, have become sacred, fundamental, unchangeable principles. And if we do that, if we have this category confusion, basically we lose the spiritual science. For example, in Germany, obviously there's medical science. But if someone needs a doctor and there's no doctor, the fact that somewhere in Germany there's medical science, it doesn't help that person. So Prabhupada gave us a spiritual science. But if we are not spiritual scientists, it doesn't help the world. Prabhupada said that the modern world is a headless body. But we've forgotten that ISKCON is a disembodied head. ISKCON's a disembodied head. And
how do you mean this place? It's a very...
Well, like the arms, right? The arms. I mean, we have no power in society. We want to, what power do we have? Who cares about us? What relevance do we have? I follow German news, Deutsche Welle, and the point is, no one ever talks about us. We're not relevant. We're not part of the national discussion, especially nowadays, because one of the main topics in Europe right now is the role of religious minorities, who also happen to be immigrants a lot of the time. So the role of religious minorities, to what extent should people from a different culture, to what extent should they conform to, adjust to the values and the principles of Germany or France or Holland or Denmark or England, and to what extent should they do things their own way? And what does it mean to, what is religious freedom and so on? The main topics in Europe right now are religious, and no one wants to know what we think. So I mean, what greater proof do we need of our irrelevance? So in that sense, there's a head, there's the arms. We have no arms. If we can't call up somebody on the phone and say, okay, send over 500 people to... No. We are a disembodied head. But here's the point I was making. Paran Shreyas, remember this from... where's Paran Shreyas? Oh, there you go. If, unfortunately, a body is decapitated, the head is cut off, the body can't figure out how to reconnect to the head. It's the head that has to figure out how to reconnect to the body. We blame the non-devotees for not coming to us. We don't really go to them, because even if we go out in public, we are totally in our own private space, even if we're out on the street. So we're not really going to them, and they're not coming to us. So conclusion, it's their fault. Or it's the fault, like it was in France, because 30 years ago there was a leader that did bad things. So it's his fault, or it's the public's fault. So I believe I believe that the Hare Krishna movement will be successful and important in Germany when it becomes a German Hare Krishna movement. And that does not mean changing our philosophy. It does not mean changing our spiritual practice. It does not mean changing our institutional framework. People used to say to me, what about that old case of New Vrindavan? Have you heard that history? Where Swami became a little too enthusiastic. And the point is, he changed the philosophy, he changed the spiritual practice, and he changed the institutional framework. Whereas in our Krishna West program, we don't change any of those. So there's no comparison. We are maintaining intact everything that Prabhupada said shouldn't be changed. But still, yes, Krishna Sharna. I'm sorry, you wanted to...
Yeah,
And then Krishna Sharna?
my question is really, why is that mentality prevalent? Because I feel that there's like the problem that people want to be open now, they want to be self-critical, but at the same time, there's lots of problems when it comes to criticizing, when there's bad, for example, bad media or something about, ISKCON, we had that last year. It was from a major television station, they did a 7-day report. They went to Simchalam, and it was, in my opinion, not really well how the devotees presented themselves. But I had the feeling that there was little, if no, self-critical analysis of this report, in the sense that, that people would also ask themselves, why did we present ourselves this way? And there was no question like why, that they would go really to the culture and really look
Okay,
at the
yeah,
culture.
okay.
I
I understand the point. So, ich verstehe das Punkt. Prabhupada introduced to us the concept of dovetailing. In other words, if you join the movement and you love to eat prasadam. And Prabhupada even cooked very delicious prasadam so that people could transfer their attachment to eating to prasadam. Or, for example, you join the movement and you're a musician, so you make music for Krishna, or whatever. Unfortunately, there's sort of a dark side to this also. If you join the movement and you, like almost everybody in the world, if you're attached to lording it over other people, then there's a fantastic way to lord it over the whole planet. Because you're part of the master culture, you're part of... In other words, it's one thing to say, yes, Krishna is God, Prabhupada is his pure devotee, and we're, most fortunate to be here. But I believe, this is my opinion, that there is a problem among devotees where not every devotee, but I think a significant number have grown up in Krishna consciousness in a way that thinking that I'm better than the whole world is actually built into the foundation of their faith and their enthusiasm and their commitment. I think there's actually a deep attachment to thinking that I'm better than everyone, than the whole world. And so, also, I think that, and there's another point, let's say many devotees are not so proud, but are not so attached to being better, but it becomes, I believe, a psychological debility. In other words, for example, let's say you grow up, and let's say your mother is really nuts, and she tells you that unless you drink 3 cups of pink lemonade every day, you'll die. And so, you drink lemonade. So, but what if it turns out your mother's an avatar or something? So, in other words, if there's this story that's told to devotees that Prabhupada only wants this and Prabhupada hates that, and if you don't do this, then you're not accepting Krishna. And frankly, even when Prabhupada was here, Prabhupada used to always complain, I heard him, that his own disciples didn't read his books. How many devotees seriously study history? How many devotees seriously study philosophy? And so you get devotees in general, they're not historians, they're not serious philosophers, they're told all these stories that, all these bad things will happen to you if you don't do things. And and here we are, an irrelevant movement. Yes? I'm sorry, Krishna. Well, go ahead, ladies first.
Right, so you speak on the social level, but I have a more practical question, like in the temple, because it's from one extreme so much to the other, and it becomes so relevant topic, how to dress, that we forget the main point. So how one can make it practically, for the ones who like to wear sari, and if you don't, just don't, but like, how to make it work practically for both.
Right. Okay. Okay, first of all, I appreciate your sincerity, and if someone does live in a temple, of course, they have to follow the temple principles, because, for example, if I choose to come to Germany, I have to follow the laws of Germany. So, at the same time, my interest is not merely interest in clothes, which would be absurd. You know, sannyasi obsessed with how people dress. Oh my God, look at how that person is dressed. So it's, that would be crazy. I have another interest. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Jaidang Paramanguyama, that the one who preaches is most dear to me. And Prabhupada personally taught me on many occasions. Prabhupada personally somehow or other trusted my intelligence. He used to tell people he's intelligent. So, anyway, I'm not saying that to praise myself. I'm just saying that Prabhupada somehow, he would call me, he would talk to me, and he wanted to save this world. He deeply, deeply desired to save this planet. And so if I believe, as I do, with all my heart and all my intelligence, that certain policies, certain ideas are stopping us from being successful and defeating Prabhupada's mission, then it's not superficial. Because trying to, obviously in a temple, if you're living in a temple, that's very nice. Temples are Vaikuntha, and so if you live in a temple, you have to cooperate. But the reason I'm not trying to disturb the temples. I'm simply trying to encourage everyone to develop programs that are relevant, but, as far as they're able to. But to me, clothes are superficial, but doing something that does not allow us to grow and to be a successful Hare Krishna movement, to me that's most important. Because I dedicated my life to trying. Prabhupada made it very clear to me. Every time I'd go to see Prabhupada, he would say, so how many temples did you open? How many books have you distributed? And so to me, it's the most important thing in the world is to make Prabhupada's movement successful. And that's why I'm concerned about these things, not for their own sake.
I have no doubt in that. I'm just how to make it work practically, because our movement is on temples. Like, temples are there.
I think that
It's there.
I think if our movement, the temples are part of our movement. Yeah, they're part of the movement. And I'll be very frank with you. I believe that unless we develop in Germany, in England, in America, in Canada, in Australia, unless we develop in America, in the West, a Western Hare Krishna movement, following all of Prabhupada's teachings, philosophy, same spiritual practice, for example, every day you make sure to overeat. It's one of the basic principles, right? Anyway, but following the same philosophy, same spiritual practice, same institution, but I feel the only way forward. We've tried for 35 years. It's over a third of a century. It's almost 40 years that a particular approach to spreading Krishna consciousness doesn't work in the Western world. It's a simple fact. Obviously there are some devotees, and the devotees that are here are really wonderful devotees. The devotees we have, like you and the others, I see as really great souls. The devotees we have, they're wonderful, great souls that somehow receive Prabhupada's mercy. But somehow or other, we are not succeeding. It depends. It's like one leader said, well, we're surviving. That's not what Prabhupada taught. Prabhupada didn't, urge me, please make sure, please survive. Prabhupada taught me about saving the world. And so if that's our goal, Prabhupada said, if you can't expand what I've given you, at least maintain it. We didn't do that. I don't lose sleep at night because I have so much guilt. I don't want you to lose sleep because you're guilty. It's just a fact. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm simply stating an obvious fact of history which we're not supposed to say. And that is we didn't succeed. For example, then Krishna Sharna.
Oh, yeah.
No, behind you. Oh. Yeah, you. Yeah, I'll get to everybody. It's a fact. We did not maintain what Prabhupada left us. The Western Hare Krishna movement is just a little shadow of what it was. So let's just, Beatles, Uchahu, Paul, that, hey Jude, when you let it under your skin, then you begin to make it better. So we have to, if we just all pretend, if we live in a fairy tale world, you see this. You want to see a fairy tale world, and I don't mean to offend Vaishnavas because they're great souls, but you can see on YouTube, you see these Harinam parties, sometimes European capitals, where devotees are jubilant. They're just, you can just see, we're saving the world, and everyone's just walking by. It's like parallel universes. It's just parallel universes. We're not in the real world. We're in a world where everything happens by prophecies, rather than by going out, as Prabhupada said, and actually doing the work. So what do we do? I think that only when we, like Prabhupada, here's a Prabhupada story from Satsarupa, Prabhupada, Nectar, I think those little books he wrote. My godbrother Balavanta ran for mayor of Atlanta with Prabhupada's encouragement, in God We Trust party. And Prabhupada saw a picture of him with a suit, tie, he had hair. And when Prabhupada saw this picture, he said, "This is what I always wanted. This is what I always wanted. My American disciples dressed like Americans. You should become famous as American Vaishnavas." Obviously, that applies to Germany. Obviously, Germans, devotees should not be known as American Vaishnavas. Not unless they work for the NSA, then it's all right. Then they'll be respected in Germany. So, but you see the point. So, just to conclude, I have to get on to the other people that want to ask questions, that as far as the temples, I'm convinced, based on history, Vaishnava history, because every time in history the Vaishnavas succeeded, they made these adjustments. Things that we call Vaishnava dress, things that we call Vaishnava this or that, actually did not come from the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas accepted those things to fit into their societies. And so when we actually present Krishna consciousness appropriately, then we'll succeed. Prabhupada himself said, I just read a quote from Prabhupada, he said, if you present Krishna consciousness appropriately, it cannot fail. But it did fail. So we're not presenting it appropriately. If the temples accept or don't accept, that's their decision. I'm not going to, fight with them. I'm not going to attack them. But I think whoever understands that we have to have in Germany, a German Hare Krishna movement, in France, a French Hare Krishna movement, in Holland, a Dutch Hare Krishna, whoever understands that and has the courage and the devotion to Prabhupada to do it, those are the people who are actually going to carry this movement to success. And so it's up to everyone, in my view. Anyway, sorry, first Krishna Sharna and then back there. First he was been waiting for, and then you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about tilak. Is that external sign that we could forego? Or,
Given like tilak. I think tilak should be, I use tilak every day. I actually did put it on, but I don't, some people they really put it on, but I think it should be used at the proper time and place. In India, everyone wears their card, on their forehead. Like the women have their stop sign. And so in the West, to have all kinds of things on your forehead is extremely unusual. And so I think we should use it at the right time and place and not at the wrong time and place. Yes?
you talked about to be German in Germany, and it's not a question; it's a personal comment. For myself, I even go a little further. It's not for me. It's not to be a German. For me, it's to be me, because I experienced several times when I came to the ashram. They tried also book distribution, and it never worked for me. And at a certain point, I started to do what I like to do, and at this time it was...
what was that?
In this time I was repairing the cars. I was doing this even before, and I was as a monk. And in this practice I was really shining somehow, and finally it ended up also in the television. And I make the same experience here in the village since I'm here. So no villager come to the castle, and usually the castle people, they don't mix with the village people. And at a certain point I started to go to the village with some things village people can understand. So I still repair my car and go to the neighbor and ask for some tools. And then he becomes interested in me. If I go to my neighbor and say, I'm doing this and I have this philosophy, then he don't want to listen. When I go and ask for some tools, and he had some doves without heads and were preparing for the soup, and I said, wow, what you did with them? And then they asked me, you're a vegetarian, so they came. So.
No, very good. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true, and actually religion's also spread very much that way, by just grassroots, just people meeting people. At the same, so that's very good, and that is an important thing. At the same time, ultimately, there is a Hare Krishna movement. And it will have an image in Germany, whether we like it or not. I mean, we can't change the fact that there's a Hare Krishna movement in Germany, and we can't avoid having some image. Mm-hmm. And therefore, now as far as you say, like, I want to be me, that's true. But actually, we are a balance. We are private individuals, and we are social creatures. You speak German because of society. I mean, without society, all of us would be we wouldn't have even survived. So, if you think about it, we are individual and we are social. We are private and we're public. And when we keep that balance, then we're healthy as people. And so what you're doing is very important, and that's a very important thing. Also, there is a Hare Krishna movement. And if there has to be a German Hare Krishna movement. Like I said, Krishna called Arjuna Bharata. Why? After telling Arjuna, you're not the body, he called him by his nationality. Prabhupada said that he used to talk about America. He used to appeal to our nationalism. And so that's all I'm saying. But what you're doing is also important, of course. So, yes, you want to...
The title of the presentation was somehow Universal Spiritual Principles.
Yes.
Would you like to go on that subject maybe a little bit more? Because of course it's good for us to understand that if we...
Well, the principle of equality. It's a universal spiritual principle that all living beings are equally dear to Krishna.
If we go a little deeper.
But let's start with that. I mean, as far as universal principles, we're equal because we're not our body. We could explain to people in Germany, for example, that equality and democracy are absurd empirically. If you favor empirical science, you have to give up democracy and equality, because equality is empirical nonsense. Every conceivable test you could give to a human population will show immediately they're not equal. And therefore, democracy is based on a metaphysical principle, not a physical principle. Everyone, here's a good one for you. Actually, every civilized human being lives in a bi-dimensional universe. Because we have our physical life, obviously, but we have our metaphysical life. Here are some metaphysical principles that are not empirical. Justice, freedom, equality, compassion. Now, if you say the world's only empirical, then equality is nonsense, democracy is nonsense, and if you admit that actually, I mean the obvious, that reality has two dimensions, physical and metaphysical, then where is the metaphysical science? We have a physical science, but we don't have a metaphysical science, and that's what Krishna consciousness provides. So, you can explain all that. Again, it's not sectarian, it's a metaphysical, spiritual science. Any other question? Make sure you're awake.
I got one more question.
Yes.
What would you think? How would you think would be a good approach to get more attention in the academic sphere and get back?
Well, you have to speak their language. If you come to Germany speaking Hungarian, you won't get very far. So they have their own language. They have their own culture. You have to, like Krishna Sharma is an academic. I mean, they have their language and culture out of respect. I mean, here's the point. I think, there's something in human psychology, like in sexual matters, when someone becomes frigid and they're not able to engage in. So I think to some extent, the Hare Krishna movement has become, in terms of, not in the case of Satchidananda Swami, who's very creative, but I think a lot of the movement has become sort of frigid, like we don't think very well. Like, how do you spread the movement? We become dependent on going down the street, basically like very pious Martians. And, I've had so many devotees tell me, if we don't dress in a very strange way, no one will notice us. We can't get anyone's attention. What do other people do? In Germany, there's so many political parties. There's so many different spiritual movements. There are spiritual movements that are much more successful than us. What do they do? What do they do? You've obviously studied these things and you're having success, but I think all of you, you're intelligent, you live here, and talk to each other and figure out a way to appropriately communicate with the German people. Find out, how to talk to them. You all know that. So, and you all have that ability. You have the intelligence, you have the ability, but it's okay to do that. It's okay to be creative for Prabhupada. Yes?
We have here some actual temple presidents, some former presidents, and some temple presidents, and some future temple presidents of ISKCON centers. So how would it look practical to have a German ISKCON center, like ISKCON temple? How does the daily life look there? What would be different to, as we know, the Hare Krishna temple, where we meet for Mangal Arati, we dress in a dhoti, we put tilak, we sit on the floor and eat our mostly Indian food. So how would you imagine such a center? How does it look like?
Oh my God, the devil's in the details.
Well, the question would be, how do you do it, for example, in your center?
Okay, and in my own life. Yes, the spiritual program is the same. Mangal Arati, chanting japa, reading, having a Bhagavatam class, that's all the same. As far as dress, I don't think necessarily we have to use Indian dress. It's my view. I don't think it's spiritual, other than that it's used for Krishna, which makes it spiritual. But I don't think that you take a piece of cloth and tie it a certain way, it becomes spiritual. I don't quite understand that. We're used to it. For example, you have to understand the psychological element here. For example, in South India, Kerala, the South Indian state of Kerala, it's almost the only Indian state where there's a lot of Christians. And I know when I used to go to India back years ago that Indian Christians thought that a suit and tie was Christian dress. And they felt more Christian when they wore a suit and tie. That was back in the days, say in the 70s, when people like in South India wear dhotis. So you'd see like a South Indian community, Kerala community, they'd all be wearing dhotis and kurtas, but the Christians, Indians, wear a suit and tie because it made them feel more Christian. So, and similarly, Sufis and Buddhists and everything, they feel more Buddhist and more Sufi and more of this and more of that. So, but just get back to I'll just try to finish, then you can. So the spiritual program is the same.
Why? Means same melodies, same instruments.
No, I think, I mean, of course, I mean, instruments, a lot of people like bhajan, kirtan. I mean, it's like food. You can't tell people what food they should like. You can't tell people, but this is my view. It's just my view. I believe that, you know, whether it's in the temple room or out in Sankirtan, you can make it sing. But I think ultimately we should develop, for example, in Protestant and Catholic churches in Germany, they don't use ancient Palestinian instruments.
Organ.
What? Well, they use the organ, but what I mean to say is, I trust all of you to find a way to do this. I mean, you're all intelligent. You all know Germany much better than I do. And I think success does not mean, for me, that we reach out to one community. In other words, one type of people. That's part of the success. That's a part of the success. That's something we should do. But again, it's like we were discussing that we can't just be embassies but no country. There has to be a Hare Krishna movement in Germany that people feel comfortable with. Otherwise, we go to this event or that event. It could be a yoga community, it could be an animal rights community, it could be a university. We go to all these different places. People like us, we're normal, we're intelligent. But when they come back to our center, suddenly they're not comfortable. And that's kind of like the dirty little secret of the Hare Krishna movement. At least in America. I don't know Germany. In America, almost all the devotees I talk to have very, very mixed feelings about inviting people to the temples. And that is absolutely a disaster. Because you cannot grow as a movement unless everyone is just so anxious to bring people to your center. When we were young and, you know, ecstatic and crazy, but very devoted, I mean, we would almost like drag people back to the temple. That's how a movement grows. When you have a movement where most of the people are embarrassed or have doubts about even inviting people to your center, there's no way in the world you can grow. It's just impossible. You cannot be successful. You cannot grow. And so basically, and again, just to complete this, we need to go out to German people in appropriate ways where they feel comfortable, and then bring them back to a spiritual center which is consistent with, which is compatible with the positive experience they had. They need to have a positive experience when they meet us, and we bring them back to a spiritual center where they continue to have positive experiences, not culture shock. Like, oh my God, this is not like talking to you. I mean, I was talking to you, I thought you were normal. This is like, I mean, there's one story from Seattle, Washington in America where it's, I mean, literally almost 100% just a Hindu community led by an American leader. And I know one devotee and she brought a friend of hers. They were in medical school together to the Seattle temple, and literally the person walked in, looked, and just like almost went into panic and just like ran out. So people need to, I mean, you're all intelligent people. You go out, you meet people, you attract them. Where do you bring them to? People, it's just like your body has certain needs, like nutrients, vitamins, carbohydrates. People have certain needs. People need sacred places. If you look at religions that succeed, it's because they bring to people everything that people need. People can satisfy all of their spiritual and religious needs with that institution. It's like you go to one of these big stores and you can buy everything you need. So one of the things that people need, they need sacred space. They need spiritual community. It's not about me, like I can go out as so-called high-profile sannyasi or something, and I can make a good impression on people. But then where do I bring them? How do I? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I want to say in the beginning I completely agree with you, and I'm really on the same page, and I like this idea of integrating into the society. But what I'm more concerned with than just the dress code is our mentality behind, because even if we dress as normal people, but we still have this, I want to preach or I need to preach to you. This is what people feel actually, and I think that even if you're dressed as a Vaishnava, but you're really communicating kindness and compassion and all these wonderful qualities, people will sense it, and then they will say, I want to associate with you, and what is it that you practice, so that I may also become, but I believe you should dress.
No, I agree with you, absolutely.
But I'm just thinking, I thought Krishna West was focusing also more on developing all these mental attitudes.
Yeah, it is. But I think that, I agree with you completely. We agree with each other. I think that, and I don't want to be superficial, but I think that, to me anyway, based on my study, and especially in America and other places, I think the dress, it's obviously what you said, it's about mentality, but I think it's a symbol of something. And if someone, for example, let's say someone uses Western dress, they say, I'm in disguise. In other words, I'm really the person in Indian clothes, but I'm in disguise now. Then that's not the point. So, as far as preaching, yes. I know in America, a lot of them don't use that word anymore. So, it's a question of just sharing, offering, it's like you see a really great movie, you tell people, oh my God, you have to see this movie. It's that spontaneous, happy thing. You're not, and but you're right. It is also about the mentality, and that's why that was the whole thing I did before. I was talking about, that duality of thinking we're different kinds of people, not seeing the oneness. So I think we have to. I think we need to obviously develop this sense of empathy and oneness, not think we're better than other people. Yeah, maybe I'm very fortunate, but it doesn't mean I'm better than someone. And I think, even like you said, no matter how someone's dressed, if they're kind and all that, it's true. But, see, here's the problem. And this gets back to the basic sociology of how religions grow. You're a good person, you meet someone, they like you, and they have a really great experience talking to you. But people, in order to really advance on the path and really become useful to the world, they need to find community. Because it's actually in community that, I remember when I was going to Harvard, when I would go back from the Boston Temple over the bridge, over the Charles River to Cambridge, where Harvard is, they had this old plaque on the bridge. It was really nice. It said, the community of the wise is the welfare of the world. And so really, it's just like the Sankirtan movement. And so I'm sure whoever you meet will be impressed. But then if we can somehow engage people in spiritual community, that's how people really, psychologically, sociologically, spiritually, they really give their lives to Krishna. We can study other religions that are successful. And they do that. They emphasize community and sincere relationships and friendship. So, we can see this, for example. I know several examples of some of the most famous sannyasi, guru, GBC leaders in ISKCON who have had fabulous success in one part of the world and no success in another part of the world. Same person, same advanced devotee, compassionate, empathetic, everything. In one country that's more interested in Indian culture, and is not a Western country, thousands of devotees. In America, almost nothing. Same person. So again, we do have to, anyway, but we agree. So so in order, so you wanted to ask something and then, Parang Shreyas. Do I know you? Yes.
Could it be that the people also don't follow us because they see that we are most of the time not authentic?
In what sense?
Not just in clothes, but just to show us like we are. That we try to be a little better as we are in the real life, and they see it and think they are not authentic, and therefore it's not interesting for me.
Yeah, it's possible. We're all talking about the same thing, really. We're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about what Krishna describes as really seeing all living beings as one. I mean, in the sense of equal, including myself. And Krishna says, Ātma-Yoga. I'll explain a little Sanskrit for you. Upa means near. It means near. And actually from Upa we have, I don't know how you say it in German. In English it's hypo, H-Y-P-O. Upo? Huh? Upo. Yeah, Upo is just Sanskrit Upa, same word. Because in Greek the H was silent, so it's actually Upa in Greek. So, and ma is measure. Measure. So upama, to bring close to measure, means a comparison. And so opamya means measurement, comparison, comparing. And so Krishna says atma, oneself, atma-opamyena, by comparing, by the act of comparing with empathy with yourself, atma-opamyena sarvatra, samat, one sees that we're all equal. So, yeah, because we're trying, that's exactly the point that both of you were saying, really, that when we understand we're not the body, that famous doctrine, when we understand that we're really spirit souls, and we see everyone as being like ourselves. In fact, if you love people, I mean, if you really love, you have to like people. You can't be a Vaishnava preacher or sharer or whatever word you use, if you don't really love people. I mean, I know myself. I just love to share Krishna consciousness, and it's just me. I'm from California. If I'm walking down the street, I wave to truck drivers, and they honk and wave to me and everything, and I just like people. I find people very interesting, and so you just have to really like people, and if you like people, they'll like you. And when I talk to people, I'm really interested. I'd love to talk to you. Like, where are you from? Tell me about yourself. And so we really have to have that. We have to really like people and be interested in people. And I mean, how can I, preach or whatever we're allowed to say, how can I really give them Krishna consciousness if I don't know them? It's like for example, this is a true story. There was this so-called Ayurvedic doctor. He's really a fake. But he was just staying for free in our building in Miami. He said, okay, he'll treat everyone with Ayurveda. We let him stay there on the beach. And so he was really anxious to give me a free treatment or examination because he knew that then he could tell everybody and then everyone would pay him after that because I was a leader. And so finally, just to stop him, I said, okay, you can come. So he came up and I thought, okay, I'm actually very healthy. Why am I talking to this person? So then I thought, okay, I'll tell him. Maybe it's something I can tell him about. When I started talking, he said, no. If he is the doctor, he will tell you. So, I mean, that was the idea, that it's like this arrogant thing. I'm a doctor, I'll tell you what's wrong with you. Don't tell me. So, in a sense, like preaching in the pejorative sense, in the negative sense of the word, it's like, how can I talk to someone if I don't know them? If I give a public lecture, sure, I just try my best. Like, hey, I hope you find this interesting. But if I'm actually talking to somebody, how can I give them anything unless I know who they are? I have to know the person. And I have to like the person. And I have to really, so it's really all about that love and friendship and liking people and being interested in people. And then just showing them that actually what you're looking for is Krishna. So, you and then Pranashas, did you want to?
Yes, you made a lot of good points. I can really agree. I think that it's really a question of the inner attitude, as she also mentioned. And I can see that many spiritual groups, they are successful. Also Indian groups, like Mother Amma, for instance, and Sri Ravi Shankar, and many other groups, Yogi Bhajan, they are all very successful, and also in their Indian style. So they are NGOs in the United Nations organization, for instance. So why is the ISKCON not an NGO? Why is she not taking part? So I think when you are dogmatic and you have this dogmatic and ideological mood, which is very prominent in the ISKCON, or had been at least, then everything is ruined, also outside, also inside. Also this point that you cannot bring the people to your temple, this is because of this attitude. I think when you practice it naturally, your bhakti, you also can, you feel comfortable in presenting everything what is around your practice. No?
Yes.
And you can also dress in a dhoti or in a sari if you are natural with this, if you if you are not dogmatic and you want to push it in to the other people.
Although, for example, in America, zum Beispiel, I'm from California, and that's like Mecca for yoga and all this stuff. It's like everywhere. And I never see followers of all these successful people you mentioned walking around in Indian clothes. They just don't do it. You just never see it. And so again, if an Indian dresses like an Indian or a Swami or something, sure, there's a space for that. There's a cultural space for the holy man. But there's not a cultural space in Germany or America for everybody on the street, you know, a la Indian. It's just, I mean, it doesn't happen in Germany. I don't see anyone, I mean, I don't know, but I'd be surprised if in Germany there are people that do that. I know in America, no one does that. And so, I agree with what you said. I mean, we agree. I just think, though, that it's hard to exaggerate. I mean, it's just, and again, you know, you brought up that point, and we don't want to be superficial, but you know, people are superficial nowadays, and I think we really have to understand how bad it is in Germany, which is known as a country of intelligent, good people, of people that sort of follow the rules. You know, we really have to open our eyes and see that no one else does that. There is not one religion in Germany or in America or Canada that is growing, that is actually succeeding, where the members in general go out in public in a way that's very exotic. It doesn't exist. There is no successful group like that. So I think we need to really open our eyes and see the facts. And if you look at the history of religions, one point I've been making is that, you know, culture, like water, it flows down, it doesn't flow up. And so what social scientists talk about is a prestige culture. For example, right now, the Western culture is the prestige culture. It has status. And Germany is one of the most prestigious countries in the West. And so the point is, culture doesn't float up, it goes down. Now, if you look at yoga, if you look at the serious studies of yoga in the Western world, yoga has been completely westernized. I'll give you an example. In Los Angeles, where there's like a telephone book just for yoga and new age things. I mean, they have their own phone book. In Los Angeles, they have these huge yoga schools. And a lot of the most famous yoga teachers were trained by a friend of ISKCON who passed away, Iyengar. Now, what's interesting is that in Los Angeles, there is a pure Iyengar school. Not westernized, not Americanized, just Iyengar, the way he did it. And no one goes there. You know, the yoga schools that are very westernized, the yoga is much more athletic, and it's focused on giving you that beautiful body you want and all this. They're the ones that are successful. And if you just want to do pure Indian yoga, it's very tiny and no one goes there. So all the studies show in the last 30 years, yoga in the West, certainly in America, has lost almost all of its spirituality. For example, one famous yoga magazine did a study. Why do people take yoga classes in America? And they made a list of like the top 5 reasons. None of them had anything to do with philosophy, the soul, anything. It was like, I want to be flexible. I want to have a sexy body. I want to lose weight. It's all about the body. So what I'm saying is, we don't find culture, it's like water. Water doesn't flow up. Culture, right now, Germany is far, far, far more prestigious than India. There's no comparison. In terms of status in the world, German culture is, it's far above India. And culture doesn't flow up. Now, what Germans will accept, actually, is science. I mean, they're known to be a scientific people. The Germans were some of the, you know, they were among the people that invented science. And so they will. So if we present a pure spiritual science, they'll accept it. If we want to culturally colonize them, they won't accept it. You know, in Germany, in America, society leaves a cultural space for the holy man that may dress like a holy man. But significant numbers of German people will not give up their culture and become Indian in order to chant Hare Krishna. It's just not going to happen. Yes, Parameshwar.
So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one should bow down and namaskuru. And so in our morning program, for instance, or in our temples,
yes,
we have this very expressed bowing down to the earth, or when the spiritual master comes, or when the curtain opens. That may be for Westerners, they may see this as wie sagt man, Oriental. Like there is the saying,
yes, yes.
People from the Orient, they are more euphoric, to be submissive.
Actually, this goes back thousands of years, even to the time of Alexander, even before Alexander. There's always this East and West thing. One interesting point is that in the Bible, in the Old Testament, people offer obeisances. For example, and they offer obeisances even to, not to God. For example, Abraham, you know Abraham. How do you say it in German?
Abraham.
What?
Abraham.
Abraham. He, when his wife, Sarah, died, in those days in that part of the world, Middle East, they would bury people in caves. And so a rich man had a cave, and he asked the rich man if he would give that cave for Sarah. And when the man agreed, Abraham offered obeisances to him. He actually said he got down on the ground and bowed to him. So it is something that was done in the ancient world. I don't know, like in ISKCON, if we can just completely give it up. What I tell people is it's a way to engage your body in the act of giving yourself to God. It's like a holistic thing where it's not just mental, but you engage your body so again, the details, leave it to you, because I don't feel it's my service to Prabhupada to come to Germany and tell you how to do everything. I feel that you're intelligent, and you're sincere, you're devoted, and you just have to, among yourselves, have to figure out how to make this movement work in Germany within our principles. Yes?
I have one more question, Maharaj. When we deal with communities, we often also deal with the question of identity, and usually when people join a community, whatever it is, they define their identity in the beginning by clear borders to their previous identity, the group that they left,
yes,
or that they weren't part of before. So what it sounds to me, what you are saying is that we should open these borders, we should give up this countercultural identity, or this, in the sense that I'm not part of this anymore, now I'm part of that.
Yeah, well,
also be open, but for someone who's...
But what do other groups do? For example, I know that we think that way, but there are actually groups in Germany who are much more successful than we are, and people don't change their clothes. And yet they become very committed, they become very convinced.
But I'm not talking about clothes, I'm not talking about our mentality, as was mentioned before. Now I'm part of this group, and this often blocks us already.
But if we teach that to be a Vaishnava means to care about the world, to love people, to care about the world. It's interesting because there are Christian groups, even, non-vegetarian Christian groups, that really emphasize love, that really emphasize compassion, even the Pope now. And so, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, all this love talk, it's actually there. It's interesting. What happened, I think, historically is, in the early days of the movement, Prabhupada really wanted to distinguish between true spiritual love and just sentimentality or mundane charity. And we kind of exaggerated that. So if you have compassion for people, it's like sentimentality, or it's the bodily concept of life. You know what I mean? And so, and there was, I think, in ISKCON in the early days, and this became passed on, we were more afraid of being sentimental than we were concerned about actually loving people. Like somehow to love people was sentimental. It's not real spirit. It's not spiritual. They're not their bodies. And real compassion is just to sell books and make a lot of money on the street. That's compassion. You know, if you want to know how compassionate you are, count the money in your pocket. And so it's interesting because if you look at some Christian groups, they really talk a lot about loving other people, being kind. The Pope talks about it. And we have that language in our books. We just don't use it. And so if someone joins, let's say your temple, and you explain to them that to be a Vaishnava means you're an ocean of compassion. It means that your life is all about compassion. That's what it means to be a Vaishnava. If you build that in to the definition of what it means to be, in one sense, different, then you see.
Yeah, that comes down to my actual question, because what I feel is important in order to be able to do this outreach, this open outreach, we have to first educate the devotees that we already have, to open up this identity border, as I call it, so to be able to give up this. And yeah, so what do you think, what would be a good approach to deal with this? I mean, this is basically what you're talking about, but on a practical level, how to deal with this
I hope this doesn't sound, I don't mean to sound evasive, but I really trust you. I mean, what my approach, frankly, and I mean this sincerely, because I was a GBC of a very large zone, and it was actually, by Krishna's mercy, one of the most successful zones in ISKCON history, by all the measurable ways. I mean, including devotees being happy, I think. I mean, I forced them to be happy, but I mean, we somehow or other we didn't have a lot of the problems that occurred in other parts of the world, and that's the way I work. For example, if when I was GBC, if I found a leader like you, who's obviously intelligent and concerned, I would think, wow, this is great. And this is what I would do. I would say to you, I'm sure you can figure that out. And really, because it's just the way I've worked, and it always worked for me in the past, and it's just my own nature. I don't look for followers. I look for leaders. Because if I can find all of you, if I can find someone that's intelligent, that has character, that's willing to go out and do something, then that's what, again, I trust you, and I trust many of you, all of you here, that you really are intelligent and sincere, and in your own lives, whatever your area of responsibility is, whether it's your neighbors or your temple or whatever it is, that you will know what to do, that you're intelligent and sincere, and you know Germany. So I'm sure you can figure that out. I would say that, like in my own case, I'm not I don't know if I can call myself a pure-hearted Vaishnava, I'm more of a polemicist, but somehow, I did pray very much to Prabhupada. I prayed very, very, very much to Prabhupada and Krishna, and I know that this is how they're engaging me. I don't say that I'm doing everything perfectly, but I know this is what they want me to do, and so I don't see myself as at war with ISKCON. Rather, what I've discovered is that there are thousands, literally, these are real numbers, there are thousands of Western devotees that agree with us. And that to some extent, I would say, if you just talk about Western devotees in the West, to some extent, the leadership, whether it's GBC or whatever, in some cases temple presidents, are a type of minority government. It's a type of minority government. So there are the reason I decided to keep shouting is because thousands of devotees have responded, and I get letters every day, people who come back to Prabhupada, or who again want to preach. They didn't want to preach for so long because they feel now there's something they can believe in. And I remember when I was just at Radha-Deshan, and all these really intelligent younger devotees, they're not like really young necessarily, but they're the younger generations, intelligent, good devotees from around Europe. And several of them said to me that they were actually, for the first time almost ever, they have some hope that maybe ISKCON could actually win. And so if I had, some GBCs advised me, do what you want, but just don't talk about it. And if I had done that, then all these people that I can't physically reach, all these people would not have somehow, awakened to this possibility. And so, personally, maybe it's because I'm from Berkeley. And, I grew up, when I was, from the age of 18, I was in the street, I'm not just a politician, but ISKCON, of course, has to be for both sides. I think you made that point. Yeah, obviously ISKCON is for everyone that loves Prabhupada, wants to serve Prabhupada, however they dress. So that's my point of view. I'm going to fight, not against anyone, but I'm going to fight for saving the Hare Krishna movement in the Western world. They say to me, why don't you go out and do something? And then I give them, okay, here's all these statistics in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, very important university town in America. Devotees are trying for 35 years to get things going. They did some very nice programs, but not so much. We did Krishna West for 1 year, and there's 20 students chanting japa. The center in Tijuana, New Mexico, was practically falling apart. Just a few sort of, nice Grihasta families would come on Sunday and make sure, turn the lights on and chant for the deities. Now, a very nice Grihasta couple of mine, really nice devotees. Anyway, they went there, and the center is just booming. And there's all kinds of good results. People who have tried their way for 35 years without any real result, they want to know what I've done in 4 months since I was, I'm out of quarantine. And so the point is we are getting results. We are getting results, but to be perfectly honest, it's not that the leaders of ISKCON are saying, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but are you getting good results? Tell me something that will encourage me. I said to a GBC member a day or two ago, I said, look, my body is 66 years old. I know I totally faked you all out because, Los Angeles has some of the best cosmetic surgery in the world. But at my age, I would just like to go to some nice, Gaudiya Vaishnava golf community. Have an American. Chant Hare Krishna, write books. I told them, look, the Western Hare Krishna movement is not winning. It's a game, and we're not winning the game. So you come up with a better idea, and I'll join you. Where's the better idea? It doesn't work for 35 years, almost 40 years. So what do? The same thing we did for 35 or 40 years. Eventually the prophecies have to work. That's not a plan. That's not a strategy. So if they don't like Krishna West, or if they don't like Swamiji, or whatever, come up with a better plan. Show what you can do. You grow, you expand the Hare Krishna movement in the West, and I'll stop bothering you. But where's the plan? Just keep doing the same thing? That's not a plan. What do they say? Definition of insanity? To think that if you keep doing the same thing, you'll get a different result. Prabhupada set up the GBC system. That is the legitimate government of Islam. And the current GBC members are legitimate GBC members. For example, in Germany, there's a government, Angela, Bhakti Angela. And, she's been there I think she won 3 elections, which is unusual for Germany. And so, obviously, on certain points, we disagree with the government. But it is the government. We are not anarchists. We are not anarchists. We're not going out in the street and trying to burn down government buildings, We are good citizens, even though so in the same way, ISKCON has a government. I accept that as a legitimate government. However, Prabhupada did not want the ISKCON government, the managers, that's what he called the ultimate managing authority. He did not want managers to dictate every little detail to empowered sannyasi preachers. Within the laws of ISKCON, for example, within the laws of Germany, you can do what you want. If you follow the laws of Germany, you can do what you want. If you follow the rules of ISKCON, you can do what you want. You don't need to be managed by a manager. It's interesting that the GBC produced this course for training new bhaktas, And it tells about, what should you do if your guru oversteps his authority and like interferes with the temple you're in, or this or that. I talked to a devotee who actually gives the course. Or interferes with the GBC. I asked, well, does the course also tell you, a devotee, what to do if your manager does something wrong? No, not part of the course. So the GBC, so there's a course that tells you what to do if the guru interferes with the manager, but it doesn't tell you what to do if the manager interferes inappropriately. Again, I'm not an anarchist. I accept Prabhupada's system. I accept when I come to Germany, I follow the laws of Germany. I'm an ISKCON, I follow the laws of ISKCON. However, it's absurd to say that unless this or that manager agrees with all of your preaching strategies, that you're not an ISKCON or you're not working with, you know what I mean? ISKCON is yeah. And we can't just turn it over to them. Yes?
I just would like to thank you so much. I would like to share on the point when you said that you do this because you feel this is what Krishna wants you to do, and you do this not against ISKCON, but you do this for all these thousands of Western devotees who really feel like this, but who are being oppressed a little bit by the ISKCON society, so to say. And when you said this, I really felt that I want to say this to my friends who are really, really nice people, and they try to run a temple. And I met them just this summer, and one of them who was really always very, like high energy person, very intelligent, very creative, his spirits was completely crushed. And I was like, I didn't see him for a few years, and I said, what happened to you? And he didn't want to say, but then his friends told me, just because he was saying that Harinam, we shouldn't go out, just dressed as we want, but we should dress nicely, we should play nicely the instruments. I mean, what the devotees have done to him because of that, it's just, you cannot imagine. And, I'm now a little bit emotional, but...
That's all right.
There are so many young people really who would like to do things in a different way, but because there is this, GBC, and there is this, if you do this way, you're Rakshas, you're a demon, you hurt him Prabhupada, and and then...
Yeah, I understand. What really hurts Prabhupada is our movement not succeeding. That's what's really hurting Prabhupada, is that he was so proud of his movement, and now look at the Western movement. That's what hurts Prabhupada. To say that Prabhupada really cares about things like how we dress. Prabhupada said one thing, dress like a lady or gentleman. Prabhupada said to me, in Honolulu, Prabhupada personally told me, I don't care how you dress, just be a lady or gentleman, be respectable. He said about Balavanta, this is what I always wanted. My American disciples, like American ladies and gentlemen, that's what he always wanted. The devotee asked Prabhupada in 1975, why do we have to wear Indian clothes? Prabhupada said, because you wanted to, it wasn't my idea. So, that's the point. These people are filtering Prabhupada. They're not giving the whole Prabhupada. They're filtering Prabhupada, and tell your friend, write to the Swami or myself, we'll be happy to talk to them. But yeah, that's my mood. We have to, not against anyone, not an anarchist, not breaking the laws, but we cannot turn ISKCON over to certain people who have proved for decades that they cannot expand the Western Hare Krishna movement. They have proved that. And so they have a saying in America. They say, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And so, typical American expression. So we respect them. Yes, they're the government of ISKCON, but it's not the duty or the right of the government to oppress people. Prabhupada said the duty of the GBC is to make sure people are following the rules of ISKCON. That means not preaching bogus philosophy, not breaking the law, just not doing things against our basic principles. But if people are following our basic principles, then they may use. For example, you mentioned that you sometimes go to programs and people speak. Prabhupada did that, for God's sake. Prabhupada did that. I attended so many programs with Prabhupada in India. At every big program in India, Prabhupada would have some non-devotee speak. It was some politician, it It was some cultural leader, and they would get up and say this and say that. And sometimes several of them would speak. I attended a program, years and long time ago in Calcutta, in the, like the Gita belt, like the Bible belt, that's the Gita belt. That's the buckle on the Gita belt. So, the Doys arranged this program for me in Calcutta, where they had all these leading intellectuals of Calcutta, and they would all speak, then I would speak. And Prabhupada himself had speakers come. So, Prabhupada also said that ISKCON will be properly governed by the GBC in cooperation with and taking advice from, at times, other senior devotees. And so, good governance, just like, for example, NGOs. Who mentioned that NGOs? Was it? Yes, thank you. Vielen Dank. The point is, wherever we see a government, strong government without NGOs, almost everywhere we see bad government. A few, maybe the King of Morocco is an exception, but anyway, we generally see bad. So ISKCON needs intelligent, good, faithful devotees to speak out within Vaishnava etiquette. It's not a question of offending other Vaishnavas. We're not challenging Prabhupada's system of administration, but they're managers. They're devotees, they're Vaishnavas, and they're managing a spiritual society, but they're managers. And as we know, in the Varna system, the managers also depend upon advice and counsel and support from those who are focused not on management, but on directly teaching Krishna consciousness. Of course, on the GBC body, some GBC men are great preachers. They tend not to be so involved in the management of the GBC. The managers tend to manage. And so therefore, if we want to establish Varna, the Varna system, we need a powerful Brahminical influence in ISKCON. A powerful, where we need preachers. And the GBC should facilitate preachers who are loyal, who are following the principles, and who are getting results. It is the duty of the GBC to facilitate that. To facilitate it. I am following the principles that Prabhupada gave us. I'm a loyal member of ISKCON. I can't say at all. I don't feel very facilitated. I feel often more difficultated or something. But actually, in Spanish, you can say that facilitar or dificultar. In Spanish and Portuguese. I don't want to criticize. They're also the GBC. They're Vaishnavas. They're serving Prabhupada. I respect that. I cooperate. I'm not an anarchist, but I know what Prabhupada said about the GBC. I was a GBC for over a third of a century, and actually, unfortunately, this is very unfortunate. I'm the last active preacher in ISKCON who was trained by Prabhupada as a Western GBC. So I think I understand what the GBC is, and I believe that I should be facilitated, and you should be facilitated. So we somehow or other have to get this to work. It's about, they say in America, the truth is what works. But anyway, thank you all very much. Maybe we'll have a little music.
Yes.
Thank you. I have to say this one last thing. I really love Germany. I think the German devotees are great, and I think Germany is a fantastic country, and we can do amazing things here. So, Swami, do you want to sing? I'll play for you.
No, you please.
Do you want to hear Ollie? This is my disciple Ollie. She's a very, very dear spiritual daughter. This is her husband, Krishna Sharna, who's an outstanding Vaishnava and a distinguished university professor who got his doctorate at Oxford, right?
Not at Howard.
Not at Harvard. And now he teaches in Japan, also does work in Germany, right?
Some research.
Yeah, some research in Germany. And Ali Krishna actually has been one of the pioneers of Krishna West. She set up our website, and she's done just so many things. She's really been one of the pillars of our Krishna West project. And why don't you sing?
Please, play the song.
Oh, the song. I wrote a song about 30 or 40, God knows how many years ago. I was in Vrindavan, and I was sitting on my little bed, chair, desk, it's everything. And I had a little harmonium, and I guess I wanted to do something like Krishna West. And so I took that beautiful song, which is Gauranga Bolite Habe Dulakasari Hari Hari Balite Na Jane Bhavene And so I wrote, I just sat down with my little harmonium, and I somehow Krishna gave me a melody, and Krishna gave me some words. And then this is the song. And wait, were you there? Were you there in the Bahamas?
Mm-hmm.
We went to this international yoga thing in the Bahamas, hundreds of people. And I did the song with Karnamrita, the wonderful singer Karnamrita. We did it together. She's a very dear friend also. And people went crazy, didn't they? I mean, they really had amazing. So anyway, I'll sing that song for you now. And it is appropriate to throw money at Ali Krishna as I'm singing. This is a translation of that song with a melody I did for it, which is similar to the original melody. So I can still do this. It all seems real. Thank you very much.
You were very nice. Words.
It's just an example of what we can do. It's just an example.